Good evening, everyone. We'll call the McLeod County Truth and Taxation meeting to order. Consideration, you know what, I'm gonna back up. We're gonna do the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, and we'll look at a consideration of agenda items and a 3-minute time limit on anyone addressing the board. Public comment. Motion made by Commissioner Wright. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Smalls. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Opening comments, Connie.
Good evening. Welcome to the McLeod County Truth and Taxation meeting. Tonight we will be reviewing McLeod County data, including the 2025 valuation used for payable year 2026 taxes, the 2026 proposed tax levy and rate, and the 2026 proposed budget. We will also be providing a forum for public comments and discussion. This meeting is not to discuss individual parcel information, whether that is value, classification, or taxes. If you do have questions regarding your individual parcel data, we will be providing time to take your name and contact information for a future call or visit. McLeod County Assessor Sue Schultz will now review 2025 valuation used for payable year 2026 taxes.
The process begins when we view the property. So we determine a value of the property based on markets and characteristics of the property. We are required to review properties every 5 years. In that process, our staff will go out and they will take a look at the property. They will get the building characteristics, the size, the age, what the property is being used for, any kind of extra features, and then we compute the value using a CAMA computerized system. Once we determine that value, the next step we do is compare that value to the market. Any property that sells in McLeod County or actually in the state of Minnesota is required to file it's called the ECRV, it's a Certificate of Real Estate Value, and on that sheet of paper we'll get what the property sold for. We are required by law to be between 90 and 105% of the market. If we're over that 105, we are lowering values. If we're below that 90, we are raising values, and that dictates how much we raise or decrease. Our sales study period is from October to September. For the 2025 valuation notices, the sales that occurred between October of 2023 through September of 2024 is what we use to determine any kind of value changes. New construction is added the following year. It's an important factor that people seem to think that they get added immediately. They do not. If improvements are done in 2024, we add that improved values to 2025, and you pay on that in taxes in 2026. The spreadsheet up here on the screen shows the value, the ratios that we were at. So these ratios is the result of what our value is to what the sale price came in at. The first screen that we're looking at here is all the townships. We have the agricultural sales ratios for each township, and then residential, commercial, and then if there's any industrial or apartments. The ratio is what we look at. On agricultural is the only one that is handled differently, where they look at the township or the county as a whole. We do not look at individual ratios within the township on agricultural land unless they have at least 6 sales. That 6 sales is what our guideline is at. Any taxing district, any classification that meets that 6 sales threshold, we are required to change. If it's under that, we can take it under advisement and maybe make changes, but we're not required to by the Department of Revenue. If you look at this, for the most part, our ratios, we're doing pretty good. We had to go up in Acoma because they rate the 6 sales ratio. Hutchinson Township and Helen Township for residential wise. We are right at roughly that 100%. And that's it for the residential side of it. For agricultural, our overall ratio was roughly a little better than 105, so we did actually go down a little bit on our ag land this year. So the next screen just shows our cities and what has happened in there. They do not have agricultural sales at all, so we do not include that in this spreadsheet here. On residential wise, we went up in Broughton, and then Lester Prairie saw a significant increase, as well as Silver Lake, as well as and Stewart. Otherwise, there are some minor adjustments in the rest. And then the commercial part of it, we rarely get enough to have 6 sales. So we didn't make any significant adjustments in commercial. We did adjust a little bit because even though those ratios are poor, they didn't meet the 6 sales threshold, and we did not have to make any adjustments. So this is the percent change that we did. So like I said, agricultural went down roughly that 6%. When you look at overall, in the townships at least, there were some very minor changes on the residential side. The commercial industrial is a little bit touchier on the township side. There's not a lot of them, so any kind of change, whether we gained commercial or lost commercial, can skew those percentages. It doesn't mean that, like Hassan Valley shows 11% increase. It doesn't mean that we went up 11% on commercial in the township. It meant that there's a property that probably was residential that went commercial. And then on the cities, you can see the percent change. Like I said, you can see where the significant increases were at due to the market. There again, very minor changes on the commercial and then very little on the apartments. Overall, on an average for the county, agricultural went down that 6%, residential went up about 4%, and commercial 3%. And like I said, that's through the county as a whole. So this is a 5-year comparison. You can see agricultural was jumping pretty good. We did a correction this year where we went down slightly. The rest of them on the average 8, 3, and 8. We were seeing for a while there some significant increases on residential. The market seems to have stabilized. We're still seeing some increases, but not the significant ones that we had been seeing in the past. The budgets sets your levies. That sets your dollars that the taxing districts need. Your estimated market value is your share of that budget, of that burden. What I always say is that the budget is the pie, your value is that share of that pie. And that's based on your classification, it's based on your value, and it's based on class rates that the state determines. So even though your value doesn't necessarily determine your tax, the budgets do, your value does determine your share of that tax. For tonight, your values are set. They were set as of June. The appeal process for your values were done this spring. You get your valuation notice in March, and the meetings are held in April. And then the county board is in June. Once that county board of equalization is passed, the values are set for the year. So tonight, we are not allowed to make any changes to your value, but we certainly be willing to meet and talk to anybody if they have questions on their value. But any changes that we would make would not get into effect until the 2026 assessment. So at this time, I usually go to the room next door. If anybody wants to have any comment, or they can do so. Otherwise, if you want to come with me to talk about values, I'd certainly be willing to do so.
Is there some, we've always broke up other times, so who's here on values? You are? Okay, and so is she.
Right. At this time, we will accept public comment. Are you going up or are you going with her?
Just one question, Sue, before we leave. when you say valuations, do you get the valuations from the state of Minnesota and then you're looking at the 90 to 105%?
No, the values that we get are determined by the sales. So the
Okay.
sales we get from the title companies.
Okay.
When anybody buys a property, those ECRVs, the certificate of real estate value, comes to us from the title companies. The
Okay.
state monitors what we do.
Okay.
So if we don't meet that 90% threshold, they will come in and do it for us.
Oh, okay.
So they do monitor, they get a copy of the certificate of real estate value. They can, one of the other processes is that there are some sales that are disqualified. They determine that they get the final say on whether or not they're a part of the study or not, and they do monitor everything. But the changes that we make is because of the sales that come through.
Okay, that was one question. Then the other question, is there any consideration given to the age of the resident or commercial property?
Well, certainly, we have a depreciation schedule that we use.
Okay.
So
And is that available to see
well, we actually are in the process of changing it right now.
for the better?
I think so.
Okay.
I think so. But what that will happen then is what we can do is have somebody come out to your property and they can go through everything and they can show you what the depreciation that we have on your property and certainly go through it with you and go that route.
Just so you commissioners understand, most of our phone calls are, the house is 50 years old or 60 years old and, grandma and grandpa are still living there and why are they paying so much in taxes? We need to understand that. That's why I'm going.
Yeah, Mr. Dahl, I appreciate it as well, but Sue's pretty good at our sales. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
my old buildings seem to appreciate. I mean, instead
Yeah.
of
Yeah. I
My
didn't mean to
newer
call
ones-
you an old person living in an old house. I
But-
apologize.
It's proven by the sales. I've done extensive, she helps me out every time I want her, or I watch sales, and fortunately or unfortunately, that's what they're based on.
Yep, yep.
And they just need to give us a call. I mean,
Sure.
when they, we don't get inside of a lot of properties, so we don't know what the interior is. So when we do our quintile work, we're basing it on the exterior.
Sure.
We put a tag on the door notifying them that we were there.
Yep.
But if they don't call us and don't contact us and have us come in the property, it's very hard for us to know what the condition of the inside is at. So if there's ever any questions or concern, a quick phone call to us to have us come out and we'll go through everything with them. We'll show them what we have for value and depreciation, and we're certainly willing to redo that and relook at it then. All they have to do is make a phone call.
Okay,
Okay?
sounds good.
Okay.
We're going to just do a couple of samples.
Okay, after Sue has completed the county valuation determination, tax capacity is calculated, followed by tax calculation. So on this chart, you can see what impacts the levies in the tax base. You can see all of our taxing authorities listed there on the right side. And then all of the addition of individual tax rates together is the local tax rate. So I would like to review some of the definitions because these will be thrown around here in the presentation now. So the levy, which Sue had talked about, is the amount of money that a taxing authority needs to operate, and that money is raised through their property taxes. The tax base is the total value of taxable property within the community. The tax capacity is a parcel's taxable market value multiplied by the class rate for that type of property, and those class rates are determined by Minnesota Department of Revenue. The tax rate is the portion of the total taxable value of the property that's needed to get to those levy dollars, so it's the levy divided by the tax capacity. The total local tax rate, which I stated is the total of all the tax rates of the taxing authorities that are authorized to levy taxes on a particular parcel. I got a double duty here. Okay, this chart lists the actual 2025 and proposed 2026 levy dollars of all taxing authorities in McLeod County and the resulting percent increase or decrease in those proposed levies. Townships are listed on the left, cities, schools, county, and specials on the right. Bolded is McLeod County's proposed levy increase of 2.5% in that bottom right quadrant. Of special importance is that McLeod County has the lowest proposed increase out of all 87 Minnesota counties. The highest county proposed increase is 15%, and there are 18 counties with proposed double-digit increases. I will pause for a moment for those of you to review the chart and give you time to look at your individual taxing authority information. Oops. That was dramatic. Next, let's review the 3-year comparison of McLeod County's tax levy by fund. The 3 highest fund contributors are revenue, which include expenditures for employee wages and benefits, capital, public safety, sheriff's office and legal services and technology, road and bridge, and health and human services. The Minnesota Department of Revenue's 2026 preliminary property tax levies report indicates the average Minnesota county levy increase was 8.1%. So for payable 2026, if approved at 2.5%, McLeod County would be below the state average by 5.6%. And in payable 2025, for comparison, McLeod County was below the state average by 3.9%. So where do your property taxes go? McLeod County has 40.4% of the property tax dollars, which is similar to 2025. The schools decreased approximately 1%, and the rest of the authorities absorbed the increase. What does McLeod County do for you? McLeod County delivers a wide range of services to a growing and changing population. These services that the public have come to rely on. We are here for you to maintain our roads, maintain property records, protect the health of the community, protect the environment, provide justice, and provide protection. This slide compares the estimated market value, tax dollars, and who is paying the percent of each for payable year 2024, 2025, and 2026. Each chart represents one of the years. The data is provided by classification in the first column, EMV total, land and building, percent each class has of the EMV, the tax dollars, and the percent each class has of the tax. So if we just focus on the lower right-hand quadrant, which is the payable year 2026 information, you'll note that EMV total of almost $7,026,140,000 and a tax of $73,304,000. Within that quadrant, agriculture pays almost 19% of the tax, which is a decrease from payable year 2025. Residential pays almost 56% of the tax, which is an increase from payable year 2025. Commercial industrial pays approximately 21% of the tax, which is an increase from payable year 2025, and apartments pay approximately 4% of the tax, which is pretty steady. So what's interesting about these numbers is the final comparison with tax and values and who is burdened. So in the payable year 2026 quadrant, agriculture pays approximately 19% of the tax, yet their value is slightly lower than res, who pays approximately 56% of the tax. Agriculture's percentage of tax is somewhat comparable to commercial industrial, 19% to 21%, but ag has far more value, $2.3 billion. Okay, this is a new chart this year. The school districts in McLeod County, for the first time that I am aware, since I have been at McLeod County, all of the school districts represented in McLeod County decreased their values. I reached out to all of them. All but one cited a decline in student enrollment, which I think can be concerning to us. I had reviewed the Minnesota Department of Revenue data. 2026 school district levy decreases are certified for 108 out of 328 districts, so approximately 33%. And in 2025, the school district levy decreases were certified for 80 out of 328, and that was about 24%. So that shows, it isn't just McLeod, yet this isn't a positive trend for us. This chart shows how changes in rates impact your tax statements. So I kind of wanted to highlight what happened with some people's tax statements according to the school district decrease. This parcel is in the township of Round Grove. The 2025 to 2026 taxable market values are very comparable, almost the same, and the classifications remain the same at residential homestead. So this example does show how it decreases the taxes. The authorities of McLeod County, Round Grove Township, and special taxes increased minimally. Yet when you note the bottom line of this tax statement at a decrease of 20.22%, that shows the decrease is mainly in the school districts, and that also when viewing a tax statement, you need to look at the bigger picture and not just say, oh, my taxes went down, when in reality, some did go up, but the majority of that was due to the school districts. This chart compares individual tax parcels by classification for 3 years. On the left and bolded are the different classes: ag homestead, ag non-homestead, residential, and commercial. Bolded mid columns, you can see the tax increase and decrease and the tax percent change between payable year 2024 and payable year 2025. The tax burdens shifted from residential and agricultural to agricultural. Bolded right columns, you can see the tax increase, decrease, and the tax percent change between payable year 2025 and payable year 2026. And then the tax burden shifts back from the previous year. Listed here is a 3-year comparison of values, capacities, and rates. McLeod's local tax rate decreased from payable year 2024 to payable year 2025 by 1.7%. And if approved, the proposed payable year 2026, will increase from 2025 by 0.2%. I sort of resurrected this chart. The McLeod County 10-year average local tax rate is 54.099%, and the decrease in the past few years is attributed to the positive funding sources to our reserves and fiscal responsibility of the departments, committees, and the finance team. Since 2020, McLeod's rate has decreased 14.4%. In 2020, it was 60.777. McLeod County's 10-year average, which I stated already, is 54.099. The proposed payable year 2026 rate of 46.350 is 7.749% lower than the 10-year average. My last slide, which is the 2026 proposed levies per capita comparison, is essentially what each person in the county would pay towards their levy. So the great news for 2026 is that McLeod County ranks 29 out of the 87 Minnesota counties, which is a positive movement from our 2025 33 rank. Number 1 has the lowest per capita value, so a number lower is our goal. Mid-chart, the maroon bar represents McLeod County with 817 for each person. The orange bars on the left represent an average of 956. And then note the higher per person amounts from Renville and Sibley counties who have higher agricultural parcels and not as heavy populated. The tan bars represent similarly populated counties with an average of 871, and again, McLeod is lower. This tells us a story and is a greater example of the work that we've accomplished here. McLeod County is now in the second position, where last year we were tied for 3 out of these similarly populated counties. Again, there's opportunity for public comment and discussion on the auditor-treasurer portion of the presentation. Next, I'll turn the presentation to the McLeod County Finance Director, Colleen Robeck, who will review the McLeod County budget and levy information.
Thank you for coming this evening. This slide provides the annual budget process timeline. Budgets were sent out to department heads and outside organizations in early June with the directive to keep their operating budgets at a 0% increase. Budgets were returned to finance in early July and reviewed with the budget committee through August. The budget committee worked with department heads for potential cost savings and reviewed outside organization requests to keep increases at a minimum. The preliminary budget was approved on September 9th with a maximum of 2.5% increase to the 2026 tax levy. The levy increase of a little over $735,000 was allocated to the Road and Bridge Fund to keep this fund in compliance with the McLeod County fund balance policy. The final levy will be adopted on December 16th at the county board meeting. The total levy can decrease but can't increase from the preliminary levy that was set in September. This is also a new slide for this year, just to give people an idea of what, when I talk about fund balance or reserves, what that means. So county reserves are the accumulation of operating surpluses set aside to provide a financial cushion against unexpected events, stabilize cash flow, or fund future specific projects. Types of county reserves are unassigned or general fund reserves. They represent the uncommitted accumulation of operational surpluses and can generally be used for any purpose not forbidden by state or local rules. Committed or assigned reserves are set aside for specific projects or dedicated funding streams as determined by the Board of Commissioners. So an example of committed would be in the highway, our local option sales tax projects, those funds are committed, where the rest of the highway's money is assigned. And also Human Services Fund would be considered an assigned reserve. Restricted reserves are limited to external parties such as grantors, creditors, or state statutes or local ordinance. So solid waste is considered restricted, as well as debt service funds. The purpose of county reserves: for emergency funding, to have funds readily available for unforeseen events or declared emergencies. Cash flow stabilization, to manage cash flow during the fiscal year, particularly before major tax payments are received. Risk mitigation, to protect against economic downturns or unexpected expenditure fluctuations. And capital projects, to finance future capital improvements such as facility improvements or repairs without incurring debt. And there's also some examples on the bottom of what is an operating surplus. For the last couple of years, we had investment interest higher than anticipated due to interest rates increasing significantly, with more money to invest from the American Rescue Plan allocation that we received. Another example is employee wages and benefits coming in less than budgeted. Sometimes that is due to vacant positions sitting for several months before they're filled. Capital purchases can be less than budgeted, just maybe they get pushed off for a year or two. And then also market value credit dollars that we get from the state of Minnesota. It was determined to be appropriate to utilize county reserves to keep the increases to taxpayers minimal for the 2026 tax levy. Okay, now on this slide, these are the funds that impact the tax levy. The general revenue and social services funds are budgeted to use reserves to cover the difference in expenditures over revenue in 2026. The Road and Bridge Fund will build reserves to increase the fund balance to be in compliant with the policy. McLeod County's fund balance policy requires no less than 5 months of operating expenses be retained at year end. This policy meets the requirements of the Governmental Accounting Standards Boards and the recommendation of the Minnesota State Auditor's Office. On this slide, these are the funds that do not impact the levy. Solid waste will use reserves for capital purchases and recycling. The Special Revenue Fund is made up of several funding sources with money allocated for specific purposes in separate accounts. And these funds are collected before any expenses can be made. This is the proposed 2026 revenue. This is a breakdown of revenue by fund. The general fund accounts for the majority and includes general government, public safety, public health, culture and rec, conservation and natural resources, and economic development. Road and Bridge is the next largest revenue source, followed by human services, solid waste, special revenue, and debt service. This is the breakdown of expenditures. The general fund accounts for the majority and is broken down by classification. General government is made up of the majority of departments, including countywide commissioners, court administration, auditor, treasurer, information technology, central services, county insurance, safety, elections, attorney, recorder, assessor, county buildings, veteran services, and license center. Road and Bridge is the next largest, followed by human services, special revenue, solid waste, and debt service. Here are the general fund capital requests that were approved in the budgeting process. And I'll give you a minute to look at those. They're a little over 2.7 million, with a major repair to be done at the courthouse building. Okay. Here are the rest of the capital expenditures that were approved in the preliminary budget for the Road and Bridge Fund, Solid Waste Fund, and Special Revenue Fund. The total capital assets budget is $5.9 million. A large portion will come from reserves without the need to issue debt. At year end, the county's outstanding debt for tax levy is a little over $10 million. It's $10,260,000. The additional debt of $2.4 million is for special assessments, with a total debt of $12,714,531. Here's a 10-year comparison of the tax levy. The average increase in tax levy over the last 10 years is 4.86%. And then here are some factors that affect the budget. Under cost drivers, the county bears the cost of underfunded federal and state mandated services. One example is the new Family Medical Leave Act that McLeod County will start paying in 2026 to the state of Minnesota. Service demands continue to increase for health and human services programs. Here, I'm just going to name a few: child support, family child care, adult and child protection, mental health, vulnerable adult investigations. Then we have WIC clinics and other services. As a service organization, McLeod County's wages and benefits make up 46% of its expenditure budget. Personal wages and benefits for 2026 are budgeted at over $31 million. Cost of living increases are projected at 6.5% for 2026. Capital expenditures requests keep McLeod County buildings and equipment in good working condition. Technology maintenance is necessary to keep up with hardware and software requirements for the various programs that we use within the county, and all employees are required to complete training to safeguard against cybersecurity threats. Cost relievers, the county has budgeted $1.9 million to come out of a special revenue account for capital improvements that will not impact the tax levy. McLeod County continues to review staffing requests and looks for opportunities for efficiency. Focusing on long-term cost savings opportunities when possible is important to the county. McLeod County used American Rescue Plan allocation to build the Glencoe Highway Shop, new ag building. They did electrical and drainage upgrades at the fairgrounds, parks upgrades within the county, purchased armor radios, and funded the free fair for years 2022 through 2026. These projects were funded with federal funding that did not affect the tax levy. And the final one is lost revenue, which covers the county road improvements as well as covering the bond principal and interest on the bonds that were originally issued. Final payment on those bonds was made in 2025. If there's any questions.
Thank you, Colleen. At this time, again, we are extending public comment and discussion on the Finance Director's presentation. So what is next? The final 2026 McLeod County budget and levy will be considered at the December 16th, 2025 County Board meeting. And again, as a reminder, final levies can be set lower but not higher than preliminary levies. We thank you for your attendance. If you do have questions following the presentation, please contact me. If there's no further business to conduct, I will hand this back to the board chair.
Thank you, Connie, and everyone that contributed to the presentation. Last call for public comment. Hearing none, I'll use my authority as chair to adjourn the Truth and Taxation meeting.